The Amp Research PowerStep here, guys, will be a great option for those 2015 and newer F150 owners out there looking to go with one of the nicest side step options currently in the category. It's going to offer that big feature of automatically deploying whenever your door is open. Now, not only will this make getting in and out of your truck a much easier task, but it's also going to allow for a little bit more ground clearance, along with making for a much cleaner look in the process. Now, the Amp Steps will certainly round out the high side of the price range at around $1,500, and the install will get a soft 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter here due to the added wiring and other extras included with the kit. But hang out to the end of the video, guys, and we'll show you how it's done. All right, so we know these steps are automated, but what's the big deal? Well, with the exception of those drop steps in the category, most of your fixed running boards or Nerf bars are only going to mount a few inches below the cab or door line, so depending on how tall you are, you really might not be getting that much assistance when it comes to entering or exiting your truck. And obviously this problem only gets magnified on those lifted rigs out there. So enter the Amp PowerStep. Now, when deployed, the Amp Steps here are far easier to reach thanks to their swing down design, making getting in and out of a stock or even lifted truck a much easier process. Now, Amp even gives prospective buyers the ability to pick up a 2-inch extension kit for those owners out there running a big lift or who crave an even lower step. Now, the best part about the PowerStep is it does all of this automatically, deploying as soon as the door is open and then retracting up into the cab or body line once that door is closed. Now, this way you are getting the added exit or entry help as we just talked about, but with that step fully retracted out of the way, you are going to maintain a good bit of ground clearance here, guys, if you do take your truck off-road on occasion. Now, in addition to that, as I pointed out earlier with these things retracted up into the cab, just gives the truck a much cleaner appearance with the running boards hidden. But moving into the build and construction, and you're going to find the steps themselves are made from a durable yet lightweight black anodized aluminum, military grade according to Amp Research. Now, I personally like the black because, as you might imagine, it does help them sort of disappear from underneath the truck visually when they are tucked up and out of the way. Now, if you did want to jazz things up a little bit more, guys, Amp Research does also offer what they call their stainless steel trim kit, just to give these things a little bit more flash on a chrome packaged truck. Now, the steps themselves are 7 inches wide, offering a ton of space for your foot, and get this, can support up to 600 pounds per side, making them one of the strongest options currently in the category. Now, as far as your moving parts are concerned, well, Amp does use some quality stuff here, guys, to ensure these boards are going to operate as intended for many years to come. This does include the stainless steel hinge points and maintenance-free self-lubricating bushings. Keeping the boards moving over the years are the waterproof OEM quality electric motors and drive system. Now, the boards and everything else, guys, are going to be built here in the USA and do carry a 5-year or 60,000-mile warranty if you should ever encounter any issues with the PowerSteps. A couple big things I do want to point out here, guys, before we get into the installation that are unique to the product. First and foremost is the fact that Amp Research does include an anti-pinch technology, which is basically going to stop the steps from closing if they detect any pressure at all. So, nice little peace of mind for you guys out there who are using your truck as a family hauler and maybe have some little ones around. Another cool thing I do want to point out, guys, is that Amp does include 4 high-powered LED lights that install underneath the cab of your truck, and these are going to serve a couple of different purposes. Now, first and foremost, it's going to illuminate the step itself, making it easier for you to locate the step at night or maybe in a dimly lit area. Now, these lights will also serve as a puddle light, if you will, helping you avoid any nasty puddles or anything like that as you exit your truck. The final thing I do want to point out here, guys, is that the Amp Research PowerSteps are going to tap into your truck's OBDII port. Now, for a lot of owners out there, not really a big deal, right? However, if you are a truck owner who has a handheld tuning device or monitoring device and you leave it plugged in at all times, this might pose a small issue. However, Amp Research thought of this, and they do even sell an optional plug-and-play pass-through harness that's going to give your truck 2 female OBDII plug ends, allowing you to leave your PowerSteps plugged in addition to that handheld tuning device. But enough yammering on, let's get into that installation as promised. And honestly guys, I will say, as far as side steps are concerned, the Amp Research PowerSteps are going to be one of the more difficult to tackle, not only due to the wiring, but in addition to mounting the extras such as your lights that we pointed out earlier. However, to give you a better idea of how it's all going to go down, here's our detailed walkthrough along with that quick tool breakdown.
Tools used for this installation: flathead screwdriver, 1/4-inch drive with an 11mm socket and a 13mm socket, 3/8-inch drive with 2 13mm sockets, 1 deep, 1 short, and a universal swivel. A 13mm ratcheting wrench is very helpful. That's a 4mm Allen key and a 4.5. These are wire strippers and crimpers. These are side cutters. These are wire crimpers as well, because this is a little bit hard to use. Soapy water and a clean rag, a tape measure, and some electrical tape. Impact is optional. All right, so first step is to remove your factory running board. Ours did not come equipped with one, but we still have those studs. And now I'm going to bring in the table and assemble the motors. All right, so before we were able to attach our hinges to the truck, we need to attach our motor to one of our hinges. Now we're going to be installing this hinge in the fully open position, so that's how I'm going to clock the motor. Now let's put our backing plate on first. It's going to act as a dust cover for those gears in there. And we're going to bring our motor into place. We're going to make sure that we can put our splines. You may have to move the arm a little bit to get those splines to line up. Just like that. Now you are supplied with 4mm Allen key hardware. We'll put a washer on it first. Start it by hand and then finish it with our Allen key. All right, we're gonna repeat that step on the other hinge and get it on the truck. All right, so there are 2 sets of studs towards the front of this truck. We are gonna use the forwardmost set. So what I'm gonna do now is bring up my motor end bracket. And I'm gonna be using the supplied hardware, which is a 13mm nut. So there's 2 on the bottom and then 1 on the top. The nut on the front of the motor, you will need an open end 13mm wrench. All right, so let's bring our idler bracket into place. These are the rearmost studs at the rear of the truck. Again, we're gonna use those 13mm nuts with the washer, the conical washer already attached. All right, now repeat these steps on the passenger side to get the brackets in place. All right, so our next step is to get our wiring kind of sorted out. What we're gonna do is pop the hood of this truck. We're also going to unwrap our cords here. You can see that this is gonna run to your steps and to your LED lights. These are gonna run to your batteries. Now they're already terminaled and there's also a fuse. This is gonna go to your PowerStep controller. So this warning right here just tells you to make sure that you have the right orientation. Failure to do so will cause damage to your vehicle. So what we're gonna do is, there's a couple half moons there. We're just gonna make sure that it is lined up. Make sure it's seated all the way. All right, there is another controller right there. That one just goes with the tab in the upward position. Now we're gonna bring this over to the truck, attach our positive and negative side to the terminals. But we're actually gonna remove our fuse so we don't send power to the step just yet. All right, so what we have to do next is find a good spot for our controller and wire up our PowerSteps. There's a nice spot in between our frame rail right there and our, I guess you can say, front quarter panel. I'm gonna go underneath the truck and put it up and kind of rest it on that frame rail, and then come up from the top and grab it and pull it up, because I don't want to snake all of these wires. There's about 20 feet of them down there. So I'm gonna go from the bottom up. So here's the spot in between the frame rail and the inner fender on the passenger side of the truck. What I'm doing here is I'm just moving this control box and the terminals for our negative and positive side up. Then I'll go back onto the top side of the truck and pull it the rest of the way through. All right, so here's the control box here. And we're gonna pull our terminals up as well, which are right here. So unfortunately, we're not permanently installing this step, so I'm not going to wrap some tape around here or find a good mounting surface for it. There is one, if you get around this AC line and flip it around, you could mount it right to the core support right here. And you'll still have plenty of room to make your, oh, that's backwards, your electrical connections. Again, we don't have that fuse in because we don't want to send power down to our steps just yet. So now that that's there, we can start running our wires underneath the truck to our steps and as well as the LED lights. We pull on the box a little bit too hard. I don't want it falling down, so I'm gonna attach one of our positive and negative wires to the battery. I'm gonna do the positive side over here. All right, we'll attach that later. Again, there is no fuse in there. All right, now let's wire up our PowerStep. The first thing we need to do is pick this back up and find our driver's side. It's easy to tell the driver's side because we're gonna have these two purple wires. We are gonna have to splice those into our OBDII. Now that does sound scary, but it's not really that scary. There is a little jumper pack that we're gonna put onto it. So let's pull up this one. This is gonna be the longest one too, because we have to go around our engine compartment. So these wires right here, this connector right here is gonna connect to your motor. These two are gonna go to your OBDII that I was talking about earlier, and then these two red and black cables are going to go towards your LED lights. So let's get this run. I am going to run it right in front of our reservoir tank, behind our air box, and then down our wheel well and then to the bottom of our truck. I see a spot right there. It's gonna be tough to see on the camera, but I'm gonna go behind the brake booster and the fender over here in the inner wheel well. All right, so as I was saying earlier, we're gonna be running it right down here between our brake booster and our inner fender. Let me start snaking the wires down there. I'm gonna get back underneath the truck and pull them down. Make sure that this breather, okay. Now let me pull that through. Perfect. All right, so now that we ran our wire down our driver's side frame rail, we're gonna connect the motor. Make sure that that Deutsch connection and that grommet are seated nicely, just like that. All right, so we're gonna keep our purple wires right over here by this grommet because we do have to poke those through. Besides that, this red and black wire are gonna stay right here by our plug, and then we're gonna run this other LED lighting harness down the frame rail to the other end of our running board. All right, now, as I mentioned before, we have to get these 2 purple wires through our floorboard, through that grommet. And the way to get there is to take this sill plate off. It does just pop right out. You can use your fingers, your hands, or a trim panel removal tool. I find this way just a little easier. Peel back your carpet, and you'll find that grommet right there in the middle here. So what I'm gonna do is just push that grommet through. All right, so we pulled those purple wires through. And again, my grommet has a slit in it already from a prior installation. So what we're gonna do is just put those wires through, seat that grommet back into place, get rid of all that slack because we can always shorten it up here. So make sure that the grommet is seated evenly all the way around, just like that. You can even use a little bit of silicone sealant to make sure that it is water and weatherproof. All right, now you have these wires through the grommet in your floorboard. We have to attach to this OBDII dongle. But first we have to strip back these wires a little bit more. Make sure our OBDIIs are good, they look fine. I'm gonna get a little slack on them. Now I'm bringing my crimpers into place with my 2 supplied butt connectors here. I'm going to attach them to these ends first. And just crimp that. All right. I'm gonna get the solid purple. You'll see one solid purple and one is purple with a black stripe. It is the same on the OBDII dongle. Crimp that on there. Let's get the purple stripe. All right, so now that you have your butt end connectors attached to your OBDII dongle, we're gonna go ahead and plug that in, just like that. And then we're gonna tuck and hide our wires behind these trim panels here. And we can just go right underneath, like this. We're gonna put our trim piece on as well. Now we're gonna get underneath the truck and attach our running board, followed by our LED lights. All right, now we're gonna put our running board into place. You can see that we have these brackets here. They do slide along that rail system. There's one in the front and one in the back. They have to be roughly 11 inches, but we're gonna get it on there, put our Allen key head bolts into it, and then adjust it once we get them loosely put on. So I'm just gonna flip this over, set it on the rail here. What I'm gonna do is attach the front one first, because again, that one is not gonna move. This one will have a little bit of play. So what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure the bracket and the threads line up with my arm here. And then I'm gonna start my hardware, which are these Allen key headed bolts. It is a 4.5 millimeter. And there's even a little bit of Loctite on there from Amped. All right, again, I'm not going super tight on these because we do have to get a little bit of adjustment out of them. I'm just snugging them up. I'm gonna do the same on the back hinge. All right, so I have a long screwdriver here. I'm just gonna push this bracket into place. I'm going to drop it on there and start my hardware. So what I'm gonna do now is get a tape measure and measure from the back of the bracket here to the end of our step. And I want 11 inches. That way I know my step is in the right place. All right, so I'm about 8 inches. I need to get about 3 more. Again, this is loose, so I can just slide it down a little less. All right, let's tighten up the board now that we have our final adjustment and we know that it is 11 inches. All right, now repeat these steps on the other side to get your board hung. All right, so our next step is to attach these LED lights to our pinch weld here. And since you're gonna be permanently installing, AMP requires you to drill a hole through your pinch weld here, install this grommet, and then that way you can run your wires through there and be a nice clean install. But again, we are returning our vehicle back to stock. So I'm gonna clean up this surface here, mount our lights right there, tuck our wire behind our pinch weld, make sure our wires are tucked up out of the way. There is a little harness and some brake line that we can attach to using the supplied zip ties. So let's do that now. All right, so what I have here is just a soapy water solution. I'm just gonna spray it on that pinch weld, let it dry, and then we'll have a nice clean surface to mate to. And then here's our light right here. Just gonna peel the 3M tape off the back. Make sure you have enough harness to reach your new wires. We're gonna go right here. Just hold that for about 30 seconds, make sure it sticks. All right, and these wires are already nice and cut, so we're just gonna take those caps off. This tool right here is a wire stripper. It is very handy. You just close the teeth on it and pull. So we're gonna install butt connectors on these as well. Again, if you're permanently installing these, I recommend using some solder and some shrink wrap. That way it makes it completely waterproof. These butt connectors do have shrink wrap on the end of them, so you can choose to go that route as well. And these are a set of crimpers. Give them a little tug, make sure they're on there. Now we can attach our LED light. All right, cool. Now again, we're gonna be tucking this up along our body. You can use a little bit of tape or the zip ties that they supply you with. But let's get our other LED light connected. This light's gonna go somewhere around this area. Try to get it in between these pinch welds here just so it has a flat surface to mate with. All right, that'll work. Now let's attach these with butt connectors. All right, now we're gonna do a little cable management, make sure all of our wires are tucked up out of the way and in a safe location away from anything hot or moving. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is just manage some of these cables and get them out of the way. AMP does include a lot of zip ties to help you accomplish this. So I'm just going to get some of these purple wires and the main loop here and tie it out of the way. Just like that. Tuck it behind the frame here, grab it, and get these wires up and out of the way. Now I got some tape to help protect my wires here. All right, do that on the other side and in your engine compartment. Make sure all of your wires are away from anything that's hot or moving. Then we can plug in our fuse and test out our step. All right, so now that you have both of your steps wired up, all 4 of your LED lights wired up, we're gonna connect our negative side of our wiring harness to our terminal. Now you may notice I had to switch up our end here because the eye was not big enough for this post. So I just put a new terminal on the end. And now it fits like a glove. Just tighten up that. All right, then we can put our fuse back into our holder here. And the steps I actually just heard retract. So let me go look over there. All right, that's gonna wrap up my install of the Nth Research PowerStep for this F-150. And for all things F-150, keep it here at AmericanTrucks.com.